but it's one from Cat. So Mara Before the Tide, written as a prequel to The Pebble Keeper. Okay. Before people called her the Pebble Keeper. Okay, Kath, take care. Love you. Before people called her the Pebble Keeper, Mara kept lists. She kept them on paper, on her phone, on the whiteboard above the sink. She measured a day by how many small squares she could black out. It looked like progress. It felt like sprinting down a corridor with no doors. The year everything frayed, she was living 3 stories up, over a shop that sold lamps. Her job was to be the adult in the room, which mostly meant collecting other people's emergencies and filing them in neat language. She slept poorly, dreamed in bullet points, woke to the tired pride of one more morning survived. The message from the coast arrived in late November, when afternoons were already gently closing like books. A neighbour from her childhood street texted, "Cottage key still under the heron tile if you ever need air." Mara didn't reply. She turned the phone face down and let the words hover like a bird outside the window. 3 nights later, she found herself driving through rain, the heater fogging the glass, the road unwinding in a wet ribbon. She reached the cottage in the dark and stood in its doorway, listening to old timber remember her. There was a kettle, a thin quilt, a window. The sea knocked on when the wind was right. She told herself she'd stay 2 days, long enough to rest, not long enough to fall apart. She even made a list for it: sleep, walk, delete emails, come back sane. It looked manageable. She taped it to the fridge and felt organised, which is not the same as well. At first light, the cove was empty. No summer families, no towels pinned by jars of shells, just the line where the sea wrote in silver and drew the sentence back. She walked down to the edge and stood where the sand is damp and honest. A gull made a long single note. Somewhere a dog barked twice, concluded its thought, and was quiet. Mara waited for an epiphany. The horizon did not oblige. The sea went on doing what seas do: arrive, leave, return, as if it had all the time in the world, because it did. She found a rock pool and crouched beside it. The surface held a patch of grey sky with care. 2 small fishes flickered like commas in a sentence, pauses that made room for meaning. Mara watched until the watching softened something. She noticed how often her life tried to be the hand pressing the water flat. The pool did not need her to control it. It did not need her to notice. She laughed, a little startled by the sound, and a stone answered her from the pool's rim. It was oval and grey-blue with a pale stripe that looked drawn on with a steady hand. She washed it in the shallow water and felt its weight settle in her palm, honest as bread. First lesson, she said to nobody other than herself. Again, because it deserved to be said twice: I don't have to fix the pool. She put the pebble in her coat pocket. Her fingers remembered it was there, which is a kind of remembering the mind trusts. Back at the cottage, she reached for coffee, then paused. The old list would have made coffee a reward for answering 5 emails or deleting 20. The new voice, quiet, a little unsure of itself, suggested a glass of water first. It was small and almost rude in its simplicity. She did it anyway. The water tasted of the pipe and the roof and the weather. It felt like telling a future version of herself that she mattered before the day had a chance to vote. On the second morning, she walked the cove again, cold air making a pink map on her cheeks. A man with a cap and a spaniel passed and nodded the coastal nod. The one that says, "We both chose this place, and that tells us enough." He pointed at the sky, where the heron flew low, legs ungainly, intent perfected. "Tide lines will be high by noon," he said. "Storm creeping up the channel. Get you walking in before then." She thanked him and thought of how the city taught time as a threat. Hurry or be punished. Here it arrived as information. By noon the tide will be different. Use the morning well. She walked to the harbour and watched a woman check the tide tables nailed to the wall. The columns of numbers looked like a poem in a language that trusted the moon. Stormlight gathered from the edges. She turned back along the beach and saw how time lived in bodies here. You could tell who knew it by their pace. A couple with a buggy moved steadily, looking at the sand as if reading. A boy threw stones into waves with the calm urgency of someone who understood he had an hour and not a day. Mara found a second pebble, the colour of strong tea with milk. She rolled it across her knuckles like a coin trick and grinned. "Lesson 2, she told the wind. "Time is a companion, not a thief." The storm arrived as forecast. Thought it felt like a surprise, because storms always do. Rain blew sideways, then straight down, then got bored and went home. The sea churned but did not shout. Mara stood under the cliff and remembered being 10 years old, racing her father's shadow along the high water mark. He taught her how to skim stones, flat wrist, low throw. Let the water do its half of the work. He used to say, "You can't bully a good bounce out of it. You have to offer it a chance." She tried now, flicking a thin stone across the chop. It thudded in without grace. Another followed, 1, 2 wobbly leaps, and then sank. She laughed again, this time from deeper in the chest. The storm didn't care. The storm had its own job. When the rain eased, she went looking for a third pebble, without knowing she was looking. She found it where the fresh water from the cliff trickled out and met the sea. A small moon of a stone, pale and cool, and held it up. It made the sky look less lonely. The heron came back then and stood at the water's edge like a piece of careful punctuation. The bird didn't fight the wind or command the tide. It belonged so completely to that square of morning, that belonging seemed like a skill. The longer Mara watched, the quieter the moment became, as if the heron emitted a silence that gathered around it. "Lesson 3, Mara said. Attention is belonging to a moment." The next days lived more slowly. She kept the 3 pebbles in her pocket, like a pocket was a small chapel. When old habits barged in, "Answer everything now, prove yourself, useful or be forgotten." Her hand found the stones and refused the items. A glass of water before coffee, a walk before a screen, a question before a conclusion. What would soften this? She wrote up a different kind of list, then tore it up because it was trying to become a ruler again. Instead, she wrote 3 sentences on the back of a receipt and stuck it to the mirror. 1 small kindness before improvement. Time walks beside me. Belong to this moment. On the last morning of her planned 2 days, which had become 5, in the way bread sometimes becomes toast while you're not looking, a child was crouched by a rock pool, sighing at the weather. His father held a damp bag of chips and the kind of patience you gain from rain. "Nothing's happening," the boy said, as if reporting a crime. Mara knelt beside him. The pool mirrored a patch of sky that would not decide its mood. A shrimp scuttled like a thought seen out of the corner of the mine. "Plenty is happening," Mara said. "Just none of it is rushing." He considered this, not yet convinced. She held out the pale pebble. "This one is good for noticing," she said. "Hold it while you look." He looked. The shrimp became interesting. He made a small sound that meant "oh" without words. When he handed the stone back, Mara surprised herself by not accepting it. "Keep it," she said. "It belongs where it can be held." The father mouthed. The boy put the pebble in his pocket with a seriousness that honoured it. Mara walked away, feeling like someone had moved a picture in her chest, and it suited the wall better now. She stayed another week. She learned which windows rattle in an east wind. She learned the harbour cat's route and how to make soup from almost nothing. She learned that enoughness is not a verdict. It's a verb you practice until your shoulders remember it without being told. When she returned to the city, the work had not changed, but the terms had. Lost my place. Where am I? She set the 3 sentences by her screen, and their presence edited her day. She didn't become saintly. She forgot, then remembered, then forgot again, which is the honest shape of learning. She kept the pebbles in her pocket, and they kept her. Months later, she moved back to the coast for good. She rented the cottage and painted the front door a colour called sea glass, because she couldn't resist the idea of a door that knew light. She walked the cove most mornings, picked up 3 smooth stones, and let the day choose who would need them. A postman once, a teacher who'd lost the knack of sleep, a woman who sat on the steps with a letter she hadn't opened yet. The name came from a girl with plates who saw Mara handing a pebble to her mother at the market. "That's the pebble lady," she said, shy, proud, the way children name a familiar star. "Keeper," the woman corrected gently. "Pebble keeper." Mara heard it, smiled, and didn't correct it. Some names arrive like the tide, and you'd be foolish to argue. On a spring morning, when the cove was rinsed clean and the first swallows were making fresh handwriting in the air, Mara stood with cold toes and a warm heart, 3 stones in her pocket and an old sentence steady in her mouth. "Enough is something I practice, not something I prove. Enough is something I practice, not something I prove." The sea wrote its silver cursive and took it back again. The heron landed without fuss. A new day walked beside her, matching her pace. Mara belonged to that square of morning so completely that the moment made space for her in return. And that is how the keeping began, not as a title, but as a way of being carried, and carrying one small merciful weight at a time. And that is my little voice